All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another NFL team preview video for the 2020 season. Today we move on with the NFC South teams and we are continuing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's begin. Now I've decided today to wear the Minnesota Golden Gophers hat for this video because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers decided that they really liked a couple of Minnesota players, plucking two of them from this previous draft, those players being Tyler Johnson and Antoine Winfield Jr. So might be a little bit of a closet Buccaneers fan this year. I'm very excited to see how Antoine Winfield Jr. does in this league because, as you know, Antoine Winfield used to play for the Vikings at corner, and Winfield Jr. will be a safety. And I didn't pencil him in as a starter. We'll get to that in a minute. But I'm very excited to see how they both do, you know, Tyler Johnson and Antoine Winfield Jr. But I think if Winfield has the career that I think he will, that'll probably be a jersey that I add to my collection in a number of years. So excited to see that, and, you know, a little bit giddy about it, if you will. But as for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go, as a franchise, they have finally met the end of the Jameis Winston era, as they have decided to move on from him at quarterback after, which is weird because it follows a 5,000-yard season and 30 touchdowns. And without context, you would look at that and you go, wow, what is this team up to? That doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? But I think the 30 interceptions and not making the playoffs, forever, probably had something to do with that. So the writing was on the wall for Jameis Winston. Bruce Arians did everything he could in his first year as head coach to make him a franchise quarterback, but it doesn't look like it's in the cards for him. So he is gone. He is now in New Orleans doing backup duty to Drew Brees. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have decided to bring in first ballot Hall of Famer Tom Brady. And this is just the weirdest thing. I had trouble sort of dealing with Peyton Manning going to Denver. And now I have to deal with Tom Brady going to another team. And I just did not foresee this situation happening at all. I thought he would play until he was 43 and retire with the Patriots. But weirder things have happened. That is said and done. Tom Brady is now a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But before we get into the projected depth charts for the 2020 season, let's take a look at the 2019 recap. They were 7-9 overall last year. Offense ranked 3rd in the league. They were 1st in passing, 24th in rushing. Defense was 15th overall in the league, 30th against the pass, number 1 run defense. Bruce Arians is, of course, your head coach, entering his second year, career record of 65, 42, and 1. Snapshot of the previous 4 years. In 2018 and 2017, they were 5-11 both times. 2016 they were 9-7, and in 2015 they were 6-10. So interesting dynamic. We have a franchise that hasn't won a lot of games over a long stretch of time, hasn't been to the playoffs in probably 10 years, I think. And then you insert a quarterback, Tom Brady, who has known nothing else but winning and going to the playoffs just about every single year, and always being in a competitive atmosphere for a Super Bowl championship every single season. So it's going to be interesting to see which side sort of bends to the other. Does he bring a winning dynamic atmosphere to this locker room, or does he sort of inherit the bad juju that has been around for a number of years? And that's just going to be a fascinating storyline to watch. It's just so intriguing to see a quarterback who is definitely going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer with the New England Patriots go to another team. Like I wasn't around for the Joe Montana days where he went to Kansas City, but I digress. It's just, you got to bear with me. This is the first time I've seen something this incredible. So having said that, let's take a look at the starting projected depth chart for the 2020 season. We're going to start on offense because we've talked about Tom Brady so much. I'm just going to skip that. Blaine Gabbert's your backup. For the running back position, you have Ronald Jones, who I wasn't a fan of initially, but Tampa Bay fans have set me straight. He's definitely earned his spot in this league. And yes, they did draft Keyshawn Vaughn in the 3rd round, but Vaughn does things a little bit differently in a sense that he's a better pass protector, so I think he'll see more playing time in that aspect. But, you know, Ronald Jones had 4.2 yards per carry last year, I believe, so Jones and Vaughn together represents a pretty dynamic backfield, and I think that they're going to be utilized very often because they're both able to catch balls out of the backfield, and that's what Tom Brady's really good at. Just ask James White in New England. So with that in mind, we move on to the skill position players. Probably the best group of wide receivers and pass catchers that he's ever had, bar none. Yes, there was a time he had Randy Moss, Aaron Hernandez, Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman. Think of him what you may, but I don't think anything that he's had before compares to this, because you got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, who is an up and coming superstar in this league. Mike Evans, even last year, missed 3 games, 67 catches, 1,100 yards, a phenomenal number 1 wide receiver. And then on the tight end position, you have O.J. Howard and, of course, Rob Gronkowski, who was his favorite pass-catching tight end in New England. So those two are reunited. Gronkowski should be, I think, healthy enough to play after sitting out for a year. He retired in 2018. So everything just seems to come back together, and this should be, we're finally going to find out just how good Tom Brady can be after struggling through the spare parts and scrap that they used to use with the New England wide receivers. Maybe Julian Edelman aside, but it's a long way away from the days of like Rashay Caldwell and whatnot. For the offensive line, probably could be a little bit better, but for this year, I think it'll do fine. They did address it in the draft with Tristan Wirfs, who is likely going to start at right tackle. And left tackle, you have Smith, who hasn't come along as they probably would have liked, but I don't believe they're going to want to start a rookie on Brady's blind side for this year. Marpet, Jensen, and Kappa on the interior. That is your offense. We'll move over to the defense. Talking about Antoine Winfield Jr. earlier, I didn't pencil him in as a starter right away, but I believe it's probably likely he ends up there sooner than later because Evans is often injured. Then, of course, you have Edwards. Sean Murphy Bunting is a pretty decent corner. He's going to continue to ascend in the corner ranks, if you will. And then on the other side, way over here, is Davis. The secondary is a question mark. It could be a lot better, as you could tell just by the stats last year, but the stats don't tell the whole story. This front 7 is really, really, really good. Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett were great pass rushers last year. Devin White was exactly what we thought he was coming out of college at LSU. He was a 2-time Defensive Rookie of the Month last year. Almost 100 tackles, sacks, fumble recoveries, what have you. He did it all. He's going to be an amazing linebacker in this league. He is a special, special player. Then of course, on the defensive line, you have Golson Vita Vea, who was a first-round pick back in 2018, and Ndamukong Suh on the other side. Vita Vea is an absolute monster at the run stuffing position. So this front 7 is going to be something to be feared. And if the secondary can catch up to them, this could be a dominating defense headed by Todd Bowles. So that is a look at your projected starting depth chart for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for the 2020 season. Moving on to the schedule, we open on the road with the Saints, Panthers home game, Broncos on the road, Chargers at home, Bears on the road, Packers at home, and then Raiders and Giants on the road to round out the first half of the schedule. Nothing too daunting other than that opening day game against the Saints on the road. Traveling to Denver is never an easy task, and Tom Brady has had some bad luck there before, losing once to Brock Osweiler. Other than that, you get the Packers at home, so that's nice. You don't have to go to Lambeau. And then the Raiders and Giants on the road is nothing that I think Tom Brady is going to be unaccustomed to. For the second half of the schedule, we open with the Saints on the road, Saints at home, Panthers on the road, Rams, Chiefs, and Vikings all at home, Falcons and Lions on the road, and then we end the season with the Falcons in Tampa Bay. That 3-game stretch against the Rams, Chiefs, and Vikings, that's brutal, but they all get to play at home. So they get the nice confines of their home stadium, Raymond James Stadium. And it's going to be interesting to see how Tom Brady does in warm weather later in the year, because if you look at the schedule, home game, dome team, home game. So there will be no outdoor weather for Tom Brady in December, which is pretty interesting. I always kind of find those little tidbits in the schedule because it's kind of important when it comes to drafting fantasy teams. A free tip. So that's a look at the schedule. I'm very excited to see this team play 16 games this year with Tom Brady at the helm. 3 big storylines are, of course, number 1 being Tom Brady. This is his first year without Bill Belichick, so we sort of get that answer to the long asked question, who is more responsible for the success in New England? Was it Bill Belichick or was it Tom Brady? Right now, I'll admit that I'm a little bit biased towards Bill Belichick being the mastermind and Tom Brady just being a centerpiece that happened to find himself in the right situation. If this season goes like I think it could, where Tom Brady lights it up and gets to the playoffs and does some damage, I may owe Tom Brady a huge apology. But until that is seen, I'm going to stick with Bill Belichick being the mastermind of the Patriots' success for the better part of 2 decades. The second big storyline is, of course, Gronk. Is he going to be able to be healthy throughout this entire thing? And the third and final storyline is the running game. It does definitely need to improve. Ronald Jones wasn't bad last year. He was definitely serviceable. And now that Keyshawn Vaughn has been added to the mix, it should be that much more dynamic. And it's also important to note that Tom Brady is reliant on pass-catching running backs as we saw for several years in New England. So, final note is that Tom Brady has been called the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Super Bowls, championships, fantastic finishes, big time plays, all doing it with a roster in New England for a number of years that was made up of spare parts and players that nobody wanted anything to do with anymore. So I think the thing that could cement Tom Brady's status as the best player to ever play the position in the NFL would be to win the Super Bowl this year, because, get this, the Super Bowl is going to be played in Tampa this year, and no host team has ever won it. So that could just be another thing that he adds to his Hall of Fame resume. Not that he needs to, but I think if that were to happen, I think it'd be case closed. We're done here. We're never going to see anything like this for the rest of our lives. So that note aside, that is the conclusion of this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.